If you've ever wondered what makes those huge, wide, lush 80s guitar tones, it's not just the amps, or the preamps in this case. It's not just those. It's these, the Electro Voice EVM 12L. These speakers were in studios, connected to racks, in live rigs, all through the 80s and into the 90s. They were the studio standard for a lot of the big name LA session guys. You might have seen them in Pacific woodwork cabinets just like these, hiding behind legends like Michael Landau, Dan Huff, Steve Lukather, and in 412s like Zakk Wylde. But that's a bit of a different story. If you want me to do a Zakk Wylde EV video, let me know in the comments, and we'll go from there. But for now, back to the 80s. The EVM 12L is a 12-inch, 200-watt speaker, and I just realized it's about the size of a human head. They have a huge dust cap, a heavy cast frame, and a massive magnet, which equates to an incredibly heavy speaker. A typical Celestion comes in around 10 pounds. The EVM 12L comes around 20 pounds. So imagine a typical unloaded 412 is about 50 pounds, and then you add about 45 pounds of speakers into it, and then if you want EVs, just throw in another 45 pounds, and now you're trying to lug around a 300-pound cab. Math. It was originally designed as a PA speaker, but guitarists fell in love with it quickly because it could take massive volume, there'd be no speaker breakup, and it was super clear. So in a time when recordings were getting more hi-fi, more slick, I mean, to the point where people were bringing the studio with them in a rack. That's what racks are. They just bring the studio with them and their amp. The EVM 12L is kind of the perfect speaker. It's just a flat representation of what you have brought with you in your studio rack. A single EV in a 112 cabinet like these Pacific Woodworks can easily rival a traditional 412 with lower wattage speakers. But there's a catch. EVs don't sound anything like traditional 412 speakers, Celestions. You know, they don't sound anything like a Greenback or Vintage 30. In fact, they're kind of the opposite. Like if you take a Vintage 30 or Greenback, at least they have something in common. You know, they've got the hump here, and then they've got this sort of a bright thing over here in a different place. But the EVs are almost if you do a complete inversion of that. So if you just do your favorite settings and plug it into a 412 with Greenbacks and then an EV, you might think something's wrong. It's hard to not favor one way or the other because you have to totally lean into the EV direction or the Celestion direction. Just keeping that in mind before you're like, oh, these stink or these stink. It's not that, they're just complete opposites. Now I will show you how different the EVs sound to Celestions, but you gotta stick around. One thing I noticed is that the EVs don't have that cutting upper mid-range. Everything is really smooth, but because of that, they also don't have any ugly spiky frequencies. So when I get them in the mix, their low mids are just strong and powerful, and there's no hills and valleys like the Celestions, where you've got these scooped out moments and you've got a peak over here and stuff, which is really cool. I love Celestions, love Greenbacks and Vintage 30s and all the backs. But there is a sound that comes with that really even EV sound, and it's really powerful. And when it's right, it sits in a mix so well, it just kind of like hulks down and hunkers down and just stays there in this really muscular way. I've got my Friedman guitar plugged into the Soldano X88, the original vintage 80s one, and Dave Friedman modified channel 2. I have a video about that. I'll put a link below if you want to check out that video. I know, crazy, like modifying a vintage Soldano X88. That channel is amazing now. I'm running it through a power amp that I can't show you because it's not out yet. But just rest assured, it's a great sounding power amp. It sounds like kind of like two Friedman amps, like as a power amp. Who doesn't want that? And I'm hitting our Pacific Woodwork Electro Voice EVM 12L speakers. I hope I said that right, EVM 12L, yes. And I'm folding that into mono, but of course now I'm set up in stereo. So I'm running into this SPX 90, a good old SPX 90. These are amazing. I think I probably got this for 70 bucks. I hope they're not over 200 bucks now, but they still sound incredible. If you go to Pitch Change C preset, this is a Michael Landau sound. He used the SPX 90 in his rack, really instead of like an Eventide harmonizer, and it's got a killer sound. Check this out. Okay. Unbypassing. So we're about to go to stereo. Hold on to your butts here. It needs a little extra reverb and delay, right? So it sounds more like this. But check out how the speakers just handle everything, right? All right, now check this out. This is the pan delay preset on the PCM 70 by Lexicon. I know the circular delay gets all the love in the PCM 70, but pan delay might be where it's at. All right, let me show you the circular. I know we're still talking about the speakers, but I gotta show you this. Pan delay. Circular delay. Circular delay. Okay, that's pretty nice too. Stereo 112s holding their own with everything. Oh, by the way, I've been looking for a pair of Pacific Woodworks for ages, the 112s with a vintage EV, and I can't find them. Or they were stupidly expensive. These belong to my friend Andrew Sinowek, who happens to be like, I don't know, the best guitar player in the world. He's played on a bazillion things at this point that I know you've heard. These are his. We're making an IR pack of these, and I've been using them a ton. They sound awesome. So I'll put a link below, and you could check out the IR pack. Promised I'd show you the difference between the EV and the Celestion sound, so let's do it. I've got the Jose going into a Marshall 412 Vintage 30 SM57. And now I'm going through the 112 EV. Now, 112, 412, a little bit of a difference, but still. Very different sound. Like I mentioned, you need to flip the controls a little bit. All right, much better. And now you go back to that Vintage 30. It's like, what happened in that direction? So you got to change the controls a little bit. Okay, let's try that. And now back to that EV. Like I mentioned before, jumping from a Vintage 30 or Celestion back to the EV and back and forth, it sounds broken every direction you go. But you can dial it in very easily with the amp. And again, you'll get these extra benefits with the EV of this smoothness and tightness and sort of a muscular thing. Yeah, and that translates over to the IRs. Check this out. This is the Jose into the load box, into the DAW, using the IR. So that's the story of the Electro Voice EVM 12L in the Pacific Woodwork speaker that belongs to Andrew Sinowick. That sounds different than a Celestion, and we have IRs of it. So all that stuff, there's so many links below you could click on and stuff. But thank you for watching, especially if you made it this far. And, hope you enjoy the IRs. We'll see you soon.